So we are recording. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to start. So this is all about creating a marketing strategy and comms plan. So it's just helping you think about being more strategic with your time and your resources to get the kind of most out of your marketing. It's part of a series of sessions called Shout About It Stockport by Sector 3, which is all about various different topics in marketing and basically helping and supporting the voluntary, community and faith, social enterprise and charitable sector in Stockport with capacity building and helping you to kind of reach the audiences and amplify your marketing basically. So I'm hoping that, I know some of the organizations here, and I know that kind of some of you will have different capabilities and resources in marketing. So I'm hoping that kind of all of you will be able to take something out of this, if not kind of, you know, everything, but kind of hopefully there'll be something that you'll be able to take away. So I just want to kind of get a gauge about kind of the current marketing experience in the room or virtual room. So it'd be good to see kind of if you can put on a scale from 1 to 5, what you think your kind of marketing ability or experience is. 1 being, okay, you're a complete novice, you don't know anything about marketing, and 5 being, okay, you're a marketing officer in your team and you're quite confident with the marketing that marketing day to day. So it'd just be good to see that from people. Okay, got sort of 1, got a few 3s, yeah, in the middle. 5, fab. 3, involved in marketing, yeah. Okay, fab. Okay, well that's it's good to know kind of, and hopefully I think, yeah, there'll be something to cover everyone on that scale. So moving on, so creating a marketing strategy. So actually I'll just kind of give a bit of experience about me and an overview of me for people that don't know me. So my name's Laura, I work at Sector 3. For those who don't know who Sector 3 are, they are the infrastructure support organisation for the VCFSE sector in Stockport. So that means we support with anything from funding. So we released 2 funding streams this year, to support the sector, to providing support and advice and resources, help with funding bids, sessions like these, kind of marketing support and capacity building. So yeah, kind of we're there to kind of help support the sector, listen to the sector, whatever you guys need, kind of we try to action. In terms of my experience, so I have about just over a decade's experience in marketing. So I started off in consumer marketing, worked in agencies, worked with brands like Virgin Media, Carling, Echo Falls, Nike, and then about 4 years ago crossed over to the charity sector, realised actually I don't really want to be doing marketing to help people sell more products. I want to kind of have a more ethical approach to my work. So have had some experience working in environmental charities, community-based organisations, and then last October I joined Sector 3 as their marketing officer. So I'm responsible for all of the communications that you see coming out of Sector 3. So onward we go. Right, I'm sorry if these slides are a bit bright as well. I'm only realising it now, seeing it full screen, how bright they are. Anyway, so can anyone think kind of why you'd have a marketing strategy, kind of like the positive reasons to having a strategy? If you want to type in the chat. Okay, well, kind of a marketing strategy, although it could be timely. Oh, we've got someone. Value for the money is the money spent on marketing, increasing sales. Yeah, exactly. So even though it's timely and kind of to create a marketing strategy, it puts you in a place where you have a goal as to what you want to achieve, and you have a steer of where you're going, and you have more of an idea of who you want to target, how you're going to target them, so you're not wasting your time and your resources on doing things that potentially aren't going to work. It's also good for aligning your communications with your overall business objectives. You always want to make sure that your marketing strategy supports your overall corporate and organization objectives. Kind of allows you to realize and seize opportunities, gives you something to work to, also holds you accountable. So, it's something that you can kind of make sure that you're working against and that you're responsible for. It's something that you can share with the rest of the organization. So perhaps you have colleagues who might not understand marketing or might not understand its importance. It can help sell that into the rest of the organization, and kind of as to why it's important, and kind of let them see kind of the pathway that you've formulated. And it streamlines your workload. It kind of, it can help you be more effective and responsive in your forward thinking in your communications. So where to start? So when kind of thinking about a marketing strategy, you kind of want to think about, okay, what are your corporate objectives? So as mentioned in the previous slide, you want to make sure that you're aligning with that, and you're working towards the overall organization's goal. You want to have a really good understanding of your audience, and where you're going to reach them, how you're going to reach them, who your target audience are, because without that, there's, you're not going to know who to target and where to spend or focus your resources. So you can do this through a stakeholder map, audience persona, demographics, interests, etc. But having a really good understanding of who your audience is. What data do you have access to? So this is particularly prominent in terms of evaluation and measuring. If you need to prove that your marketing or the marketing resource is valid in your organization, or it's a valuable source of time and money and energy, data is really crucial in being able to prove that and be able to say, oh, well, look, kind of the impact that our marketing has had. So, do you have access to Google Analytics in terms of tracking website behavior, social media analytics? Can you do kind of customer survey reports? All those kind of things will kind of help add to supporting kind of your marketing, the validity of your marketing resource. What resources or budget do you have? So, I know that some organizations in here have a dedicated comms officer or marketing officer dedicated to that post, which is great. But then some of you might not have that, and there might be some of you who are doing everything in the organization or the group. So it's kind of working out what's your capacity and capabilities in order to deliver marketing, because there's no point coming up with a huge plan if you don't have the budget to deliver it, and also you don't have the time to deliver. So kind of working out what is achievable for you. And then what timings are you working to? So, are you doing a marketing plan for a particular project, or do you want to do a 3-year forecast plan in terms of where you're going to be in 3 years? You might have had funding for to deliver a project for the next 2 years. Kind of what kind of scale are you looking at? And guys, just a reminder, if you've got any questions as I go along, feel free to put them in the chat and then I'll answer them at the end. I think we've got about half an hour at the end for questions. So strategy format. So this is just kind of, it's by no means a finite kind of contents list of what you should include in your strategy, but it's a general, I always find that these kind of items provide a good steer for strategy. So you've got a statement of purpose, current situation, key tasks and development plan, which kind of consists of, potential SWOT analysis, stakeholder mapping, key tasks and strategy, and then a channel plan and comms plan, and then evaluating success. So your statement of purpose. So this is all about what you want to achieve with this strategy. So for example, here we've got this marketing strategy shows how effective communications can help us achieve our overall organizational objectives, engage effectively with stakeholders, demonstrate the success of our work, ensure people understand what we do, change behavior and perceptions where necessary. Now, I always find that the statement of purpose is probably something that you want to do at the end when you've worked out your key tasks, so that you then kind of use that to formulate your statement of purpose. And it's just really kind of an intro, and it's another thing that helps people who perhaps don't understand marketing in your organization. It helps them to bring them along on the journey with you. Current situation. So you kind of want to understand where your organization fits currently in its sector, in the economical environment, kind of what is the context for the strategy, what is your current situation of your organization, what environment are you operating in, what currently isn't working for your organization, what are the trends in your sector. Being aware of these will help you formulate the key tasks and kind of the meat, I guess, of your strategy. So key tasks and development plan. So these are kind of just some options in terms of being able to work out kind of your key tasks and your key strategies, I guess, in terms of the marketing that you're going to deliver. So they kind of give you a good understanding and kind of allow you to open up kind of different opportunities and pathways that you might not have seen before. So has everyone heard of a SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's quite it's quite commonly used in kind of various different kind of strategies. But basically it will kind of help identify, okay, what are the things that you're good at, and what are the things that you can work with, what are the things that you need to work on, and what you need to be aware of. I think it's just a good exercise to do before you start thinking about the key tasks of your strategy, so that you can kind of help use that to formulate those key tasks. And then you want to think about stakeholders, which effectively is all of your audience. Now, most organizations will have multiple different audiences. So those can be anything from, so if we're talking about charities, hi Steve, thank you for your question. I'll answer that at the end if that's all right. So I'll come back to that. As you can see, I get I get thrown off when I divert. So yeah, so when we're talking about charities, your audience could be anything from a funder, who's obviously more of a kind of business related audience to the general public, perhaps, you know, in terms of fundraising, supporters and advocates of your cause, and of course your beneficiaries, to your partners. You know, you might be partnering with Stockport Council on some projects. So it's kind of thinking about mapping out kind of all of those potential audiences and being aware of those. They can be internal or external, and they can have conflicting needs, which is why it's important to map them out to make sure that kind of you're meeting their needs. And you want to always try to maintain a two-way continuous dialogue with your, with at least your kind of, well, at the most your priority stakeholders, which I will discuss more on the next slide. So in terms of stakeholder mapping, so this is a good tool to kind of map out all of your audiences and also help you identify which ones you should potentially be spending more time and effort on. This is particularly useful if you are restricted in resource, in time or in budget. So you kind of really want to make sense of, okay, well, who do I absolutely need to focus on? So kind of you've got two points either side. So you've got level of interest of the stakeholder. So, you know, how interested are they in your cause or in your organization? And then you've got on the bottom, the power and the influence of the stakeholder. So yeah, how much power do they hold? How much weight does their opinion or do they hold? So obviously the higher you go on the level of interest of stakeholder, the more that you kind of you want to keep them informed, because they want to be informed. And then on the bottom you've got kind of with the power and the influence of the stakeholder. Obviously the greater their power, really the more you want to be meeting their needs. And you've got 4 boxes. So obviously bottom left is, you know, they've got a low interest of in your organization, and they don't really have much sway or much weight in terms of their opinion. So you kind of, you know, perhaps want to keep an eye on them, but you don't really want to be focusing your resources on them. However, those in the top right who have a lot of interest in your organization, so this could be anything from a trustee to you know, fundraisers or fundraisers who are kind of bringing in or kind of giving your organization a lot of money. So they obviously have a lot of kind of power and influence as well as interest. So you really want to be keeping those happy and kind of making sure that you're meeting their needs and you're communicating with them. Yes, Ian, the slides will be definitely shared, and this is being recorded as well. So that will be online. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will answer them at the end. I'm just not very good at diverting, but I will come back to them, I promise. So key tasks. So once you've done those kind of exercises, they're useful in kind of getting you to think about what strategies and what tasks that you want to be working on for your marketing. So your key tasks are kind of like your strategies or your objectives for your marketing plan. And I tend to find that these 4 points below are the kind of tend to pop up in most strategies. They're most common. So things like building awareness of your organization or your cause, building retention. So that means building the continuous relationship with your audience. So making sure that they are continually involved with you. They don't just come once and give once or engage with you once an event. How can you make sure that you're continually building your relationship with your audience? Engagement. So kind of the opportunities that you offer to kind of communicate with your audience. and do you perhaps want to reach a certain audience profile, a new target market that you haven't yet targeted? But of course, there might be kind of ones outside of that, particular to your organization's objectives. So for example, at Sector 3, you know, one of our marketing strategy objectives is ensuring that our internal staff are happy. So that's more relating to kind of internal marketing, which of course, you know, internal staff are still a stakeholder in any organization. They still have a voice and opinions, so it's important to keep them happy and to communicate them with them. So yeah, but generally those four are kind of like the key ones. Also, a big one would be kind of the marketing team's involvement with fundraising. It might sit solely under the marketing team in terms of fundraising. You might have a separate fundraising department, but generally that you'll either work with the fundraising team or you will be responsible for fundraising. So that's also obviously a massive objective. And what you want to do with the key tasks is break them down into smaller actions. So you've got your overarching strategy, and then you've got, okay, well, how am I going to get to those key tasks, which I've got an example on the next slide, and also kind of an idea of when are you going to complete those tasks. Example here, which is kind of very generic, but happy to talk through any kind of specific tasks or kind of strategies that you might have later. So this is kind of built on a quarterly model, but you might want to build it on a month-by-month basis. You might have a short time span. If it's for a project, you might only have 3 months or whatever, or it might be a 3-year plan, so you might do it in financial year. And kind of the key task would be a kind of an overarching thing, so raising awareness of organization. Okay, so that's your key task. Okay, and then you break that down into, okay, well, how am I going to do that across this time span? So, okay, well, we'll create and roll out a marketing campaign. Now, again, that's been broken down, but obviously there's more detail within that. But for the purpose of a strategy, you might want to, it depends on kind of how much detail you want to go into with that. Obviously, for the purpose of the strategy, you might not want to break it down into kind of, okay, well, we're going to create posters and we're going to do this and we're going to, you know, you don't want to break it down kind of into too much detail, but it gives you kind of an overarching idea, and your kind of the people that you're reporting into, or kind of the rest of the people in your group, kind of gives them an idea of, okay, how you're going to achieve that task. But again, it's completely up to you how much detail you want to drill down into. And then another key task could be, you know, building retention with supporters. So you could, okay, you might want to say, all right, well, we'll build and roll out a customer contact journey, which I'll kind of touch on in the next few slides down. But that gives you an idea of, okay, well, how you're going to meet that key task. And then again, you might want to drill down into a bit more detail. Okay, and then you might want to think about incorporating a channel comms plan. Now, a channel or comms plan could also be used for, it's something that you could put in your overall marketing strategy, but also if you're short on time, on resource, and you don't want to create a full strategy, a comms plan is a good alternative. It's a more kind of detailed in terms of what you're going to do, where and when, and timings, but it still gives you a good overview of your marketing plan and kind of who you're going to be targeting and how and where. So it's useful kind of within an overall marketing strategy, but also on its own if you're kind of time poor and resource poor. So it's a plan that kind of marks out, okay, what you're going to do, where, kind of who you're targeting and when. And so I've just kind of pulled up an example here, which I did for, you know, for launching a social enterprise. And again, so this could be this could also work for a particular project. So if you don't want to do a full marketing strategy for a particular project, a comms plan would suffice to help you kind of steer your comms in terms of, okay, where you want to go and who you want to target. So so for example, you'd kind of list each of the touch points and the channels that you have available to you and that you regularly use. You'd then kind of describe, okay, what you want to do with that channel. So for the purpose of a strategy, it might be kind of more of an overarching kind of, okay, press release, we're going to send out 3 press releases a year. One of those will include the one on the impact report. One might include when we've just received some new funding. And I don't know, like another piece of newsworthy content that you know you're going to get. But perhaps for the purpose of a project, you'll know exactly what that press release will be on. So, you know, you'd want to do a press release to launch that project. So kind of you can kind of make it as that bit as detailed or as overarching as you want, depending on if it's a plan for your overarching marketing strategy or a plan for a specific project. And then you want to talk about kind of like the frequency. So for example, if you're kind of sending out an email or a newsletter to people, so this example is for launching an enterprise. So you just send out a launch email once. But if you were, for example, kind of trying to, if you had like a regular newsletter that you sent to your supporters, that would be however often you sent that. So maybe that'll be a weekly or bi-weekly or a monthly basis. And then you'd kind of put in your target audience for each channel. So I'll talk about in the next few slides kind of the best audiences for each channel. But, you know, for example, for social media, you'd be looking at targeting kind of local residents and posters. Obviously, that's more direct. But for a press release, you'd be wanting to target a wider audience. And then in terms of key messages, you'd want to map out what exactly, sorry, just in your question, Anna, do you have example templates you could share? Yes, I can definitely share with you some good resources for that. And then you want to map out your key messages. So this will really help you kind of make sure that you're saying the right things to the right audience, because it really is worthwhile breaking down your audiences, because as we touched on before in the stakeholder mapping, each audience will have a different need. And so you want to make sure that you're communicating what they want to hear to each audience. So for example, your funders will want to know the impact of your projects, okay, and what you're achieving. People who are giving you money will also want to know that. You know, they want to know what their money is getting. Supporters or advocates will want to know, okay, well, you know, what is the work, what impact or what effect is the work that you're doing having on the cause. So everyone kind of will have kind of a slightly different need or kind of communications need that they want communicated to them. So it's important to kind of plan that out to make sure that you know, okay, what is my goal for this piece of content or this channel or this piece of communications? What am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to say? And that will help give you a kind of steer of your communications plan. Another good thing to think about is thinking about your channels in terms of earned, owned, and paid media. So you've got kind of these kind of 3 circles, and they all intertwine at some stage. But kind of the first section that you've got is own media. So that's everything like your own website, your own social channels, your own blog. It's basically all media that you control the output of. You control the message and you control what is said and how you want to convey it. Okay, so most of these things are free in terms of kind of putting content out there. So that's kind of the first one that you want to kind of focus on and kind of get right. And it's the most accessible. because you have control of those elements. And then you've got paid media, which is slightly less accessible because it requires a budget. And obviously, if you don't have a budget, it's, it's not available to you. So those would be things like Google ads, paid ads, display ads, partnerships with influencers, paid editorial content, paid advertising. So those are is content that you pay to get out there, and you get out to a slightly wider audience. But because it's a wider audience, you don't know what the effect of that content is going to be. But it's a wider audience, but you have less control over the, I suppose, the response to that content. And then at the top, you've got earned media. So this is something that you can't buy, you don't own. So it's quite inaccessible, and it really does what it says on the tin. You need to earn this media. So this would be things like media mentions, editorial with press, bylines, reviews, social shares, and social commentary. So that would be people, commenting on your social posts, positive comments, sharing with their network. You can't pay a journalist. Well, you can, but it's not earned. You need to build up those relationships with journalists. You need to make sure that you have a story to offer journalists. So that's kind of like the most difficult to achieve. But basically, you want to get a mix of all three of those things, and it might be that you build up to earn media. So you focus first on your, getting your own media right and getting your messaging out there. And then once you've got that, you might want to think about, okay, well, do we have a budget? Well, can we get a budget for paid media? And then you might want to kind of build your kind of reputation in terms of with the press or journalists, or kind of, inspiring people to share your content and advocate for your cause. And those kind of three areas do overlap. So, for example, earned media and paid media, you could also, there's like paid editorial, where you can kind of pay to have an editorial piece in a magazine. And then also owned and paid media, you can, paid influence kind of crosses over into owned media. But generally, kind of, you want to kind of make sure that you're kind of each one, you've got a mix of those three to have like a really strong kind of media plan and communications strategy. There's also kind of thinking about the customer journey. Now, this infographic is also really relevant and important when it comes to fundraising and any kind of an advocacy and any kind of action that you want customers or your audience to take. It's good to think about the journey. And this is a good one to use in terms of formulating your strategy, because it might be that you've got a lot of awareness or you've got a lot of purchases, but how do you move people on to the next stage? Because ultimately, the awareness on the left is okay, people who don't know anything about your organization or cause and have limited involvement. And then on the right, it moves through to advocacy, which is someone who regularly supports your organization. They might share posts online, they might be a regular donor, they're kind of a regular supporter for your cause, and they have a lot of engagement with your organization. So you want to be thinking, how can your communications move your audience along that journey? So you might use this as a way of planning out your strategy. So, in your channel plan. So, for example, if you're launching a project, you might kind of launch a press release or kind of have a radio or advert about it. And then, moving people along that customer journey. You might kind of get people to sign up to your newsletter, which you can kind of communicate with them further. You might then be able to, it says purchase, but that could be donations from those kind of emails and that contact, and you kind of reinforcing, okay, your cause and why people should donate. Someone might kind of give money to your cause. They might then kind of, through further interaction with them, you might offer them incentives, or you might send them kind of some direct mail. They might kind of be a regular giver. And then from, more kind of interaction you have with them, you might move them along to advocacy, where they're kind of advocating for your cause, and they share your social posts. They are your supporter out in the wide world. So that's a good one to think about in terms of how you can move people along the stages via your channels and your marketing. So I always find that useful to look at in terms of, okay, what's the overall customer journey? Okay, so particularly in terms of donors and advocates. So an advocate might not be a donor. They might not give financially, but they might be a volunteering their time, or they might be spread, positively reinforcing your message out in the wide world. Okay, and then I mentioned at the start, but kind of a really, really important element is understanding your audiences when you're thinking about your strategy, because you want to think about, okay, who are they? And that could be, okay, their personality, their traits, their age range, their demographics, because all those things have an impact on where those person will be and where you're going to actually reach them. So for example, actually I'll talk about this in the next slide, but different age ranges are found to be on different social platforms. How can you reach them? So kind of, are you kind of going to do a radio advert to reach people? Are you going to kind of go out in the press? Depending on who they are, like, how are you going to reach, contact them and get in front of them? Because they're not going to be coming to you. You've got to actively go out there and go to them and be in the places where they are. And also, what interests do they have? So I always find that useful to look at, because you might be able to kind of reach people through a different avenue, so through partnerships. So, if you might kind of be able, if you're a music charity and you're kind of trying to access individuals through music, you might also discover that, actually they have a lot of interest in sport. So, can I partner with a sport organization or a sports product, or, get some amplification that way to reach your audiences via a different channel. So it's useful to think about it, not just kind of a straightforward, okay, what interests, where are they going to be, but kind of other avenues that you can access them. And which channels and why? So different audiences will be on different channels, and different channels have different pros and cons. So social media is arguably the most accessible to organizations. It's free to use. You don't need to pay to have an account. You can reach a wide audience on it, depending on the content and depending on if people share your content and like your content. However, if you're wanting to post regularly, or if you're wanting to keep up that engagement with your audience, it does require maintenance. But you can get content, social media aggregators that will kind of, you can plot in content and schedule content. I think Hootsuite's one, which you can get a free account for, but you just don't get the analytics. TweetDeck, if you're just using Twitter, TweetDeck, you can kind of pre-schedule content as well. So the different types of social media as well, there are different audiences within that. So I tend to find, and it might be that, your own experience with your social media, you might find differently. But for me, I've always found that Twitter tends to be quite a professional place. So, it's good for interacting with corporate partners, funders, local businesses. Facebook tends to be where kind of an older generation tend to be, and it's great for communities and building up like a community network. It's great for things like groups. Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, they tend to be predominantly for a younger audience. The content is quite fast paced and quite moving, and it's usually based on trends. So if you're wanting to reach a young audience, you might want to think about how you can utilize those video kind of platforms. YouTube is a good one for long form content. So getting across, you know, if you have any video content, getting across longer kind of messaging. Print is great, especially for localized marketing. So if you want to print out posters, flyers, give them out to local community spaces, you want to buy advertising in local bus stops and local public spaces. So it's really great for really targeted geographical marketing. However, obviously there is a cost associated with that. Creating posters, printing them, you know, especially with advertising on public spaces, there tends to be, you know, quite expensive to do that. However, you can definitely be safe in the knowledge that, okay, if you're trying to reach people in Redditch, you know, if you target kind of public spaces within Redditch, you're definitely going to hit people in that location. So it's kind of more of a kind of safe, you know, return in terms of, you know, you're hitting the right people. Website. So obviously this is a platform that can host all of your content. You can also track your marketing performance with Google Analytics. So really useful to kind of work out what content is performing well, what people are reading, what people aren't reading. So it allows you to refocus then on your priorities on kind of what is working. Obviously, again, though, it is costly depending on the websites that you use. For Sector 3, I know we use Squarespace, which I know we pay like a yearly fee for. There are other kind of websites out there. You know, you've got WordPress, which requires a bit more build and development. But generally kind of I find the content management system websites, so the CMS websites, are great for, if you know, being able to, if you're wanting to constantly update your website, then it's great for being able to, because you're able to manage the content yourself, and it's quite easy and usually accessible and user friendly to manage content and upload and change content with those kind of sites. Press, so you get direct, particularly if it's local press, you get direct access to the local audience. So for example, Stockport Express, I think it's called, Manchester Evening News, you know, you're getting that local audience, but on a kind of more mass scale. It's also free, but you do need to earn it. So that you know, obviously what we mentioned before about earned media, you know, you need a good story and it needs to sell to a journalist. So you might want to think, you know, part of your strategy might be build relationships with local journalists, so that, you know, you're in their mind and head for when, you know, they've got an idea for a local story, they can come to you about it if you're kind of, if they know that you're the person for that topic. So yeah, press is always a good one. And it, you know, we've got press templates on the Sector 3 website, press release template, sorry, so a guide to how to write a press release. So have a look at that, and also a guide to kind of like the different types of press. So you might have some news that is kind of relevant for really local audience. So for example, you've just won some funding that kind of enables you to expand your project locally. Or you might have some really national news, like, I don't know, you might have done some research and found something out about a particular, your kind of beneficiaries or a particular community that might be of interest to the national press. And then another channel is email. So this is a really good one for direct access to your audience. And also because of GDPR and the fact that in order to communicate to people now and to send out regular messages to personal email addresses, people have to opt into that. They have to have said that, yes, they do want to hear from you, which is great because it means that those people are interested in you and your cause. They have said that they want to hear from you, so you know that you're working with an active and engaged audience. There's an ability there to share much longer form content. Obviously with print, social media and email, there's only a certain amount of messaging that you can get across. With email, you can kind of have regular communication, and you can kind of explain a bit more about your cause and your key messages. You can build up relationships. So email is really good for that customer journey, particularly with donors and supporters. You can kind of take them on a journey, let them know about kind of what your organization is and what the cause does, and then through further communication kind of focus on the different projects that you're doing, the impact that they're having on your beneficiaries, how your supporters and your donors are, the impact that their money and their support is having on that cause. So yeah, email is a really great one for kind of building relationships with your audience. And then I think this is the final slide before questions. So in terms of evaluating success, we mentioned at the start, evaluating success is really good, particularly it's really important, particularly in terms of well, firstly, you might be required to show the impact of your marketing and comms from funder requirements. They might ask you to see kind of, okay, how many people have you reached, but also from a, particularly if you're working in a large organization with, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to get more budget for next year, or persuade your boss or your senior that, or a different team that actually kind of marketing is worthwhile and kind of it's working, and therefore it needs more investment, and you need more time on it. It's good to kind of have those evaluation and those results to kind of prove that success. So you want to kind of think about what success means to your organization. So that obviously is directly linked into those key tasks that you'll be thinking about. So raising awareness, building retention, raising funds, kind of what does that mean to you? Does raising awareness mean raising awareness with a particular audience, raising awareness in, the local community, perhaps you want to kind of be able to reach a certain figure, perhaps you want to meet ticket sales, think about kind of what that means. Data and kind of the evaluation kind of methods that you use can be quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative in the forms of, okay, yeah, funds raised, people reached, people engaged, how many followers have you got, etc., etc. Qualitative can be, okay, the sentiment of the support that you're getting and the interactions that you're getting. You might want to send out a customer survey to your donors or your supporters about how they feel about their support, how they feel about your communication with them. So it's good to kind of have both of those measures. And also, how are you going to measure success? So, what does kind of good, are you going to measure it via benchmarks or in the industry or kind of previous years, go by kind of like, okay, well that last year we reached so many people, this year we want to reach so many people, or maybe you have a target kind of in terms of the project that you're doing that you need to meet. Google Analytics, I've mentioned this before, but really, really useful tool, and actually it's worth thinking about in terms of Google Analytics, because there's so much that you can analyze on Google Analytics. You've got dwell time on the site, so how long people are spending on the site, how many people are visiting. You can track kind of conversions in terms of, okay, how many people that are visiting your site are actually doing an action, are actually donating, are actually contacting you, downloading something, so it's worth thinking about what's the most important action for you. So for example, sector 3, we're not really that focused on reach, because we're such a specific, because our audience is so specific, they're local to Stockport, so we only want to reach kind of Stockport based organizations and organizations that work in Stockport, but also they're specific to a certain sector, so the third sector. So for us, our kind of target in terms of data or success is about kind of the engagement on our site, and are people interacting on our site, are they downloading things, how much time are they spending it, because that can then give us an idea of how useful our content is. You know, if people aren't spending much time on our site or a particular page, then we know, okay, that obviously they're not obviously getting much use out of that, we need to change that. So think about what is right for your what kind of data measurement is right for your organization and for your strategy. And then also kind of just always remember GDPR. So any data that you are collecting, obviously you need to let people know. You know, if you're tracking website interactions and you're using Google Analytics, you need to let people know that. You know, you need to have like a cookies pop up. If you're doing like an evaluation questionnaire, you need to let people know what you're collecting the information for, and what it's going to be used for and why, and that they can kind of opt out at any point. So just be mindful of that GDPR element. And then just kind of like a final slide, just some free tools that you may or may not find useful. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but Google Ads offer a non-profit grant, a grant for non-profit organizations. So basically that means, I don't know if people know about Google Ads, but they are adverts on kind of Google search. So if you search for something in Google, it'll pop up, and you pay based on, so you pay for certain keywords, so that when people search for those keywords, your website will come up first. So, you know, you might want to, if you kind of, if you offer a community group for, or if your charity offers support for people with disabilities in Stockport, you might want to pay for the keywords, you know, support for disabilities in Stockport, or words relating to that, so that your website is the first one that they see. And again, you can get, because you're a charity, or I'll check it, kind of what the guidelines for that, because I know charities can get it, but I'll have to check if it's CICs and social enterprises as well, so I'll check on that. But you can get a grant every year for that, which means you don't have to pay, so you get free adverts for nothing. Audience profile template, so that's a template that you can download and use to kind of plot out your audience demographics and who they are, so that you can have more of an understanding of who they are, and therefore you can target them better. Social media audit templates, that's good for working out the current state of your social media channels, and perhaps kind of gives you an idea of what you need to work on. Tools for kind of creating infographics, and all these are free, by the way, all these tools. So, you know, creating infographics, if you want to, you know, for free, if you want to create a nice looking professional data and impact that kind of really shows your organization's impact on your particular cause, then it's useful to kind of do it through infographics. TPA, the local, the Prevention Alliance, they're a local organization. They have created this community map, which is basically a map of all different community organizations in Stockport. So definitely kind of add your organization to that map if it's kind of serves the community in some way. It's different because they regularly push that out to their audience, so obviously that's kind of free advertising by them. And then, of course, the Sector 3 Resource Hub. So we've got a marketing section on our website under the resources page. That's got loads of different things, from a press release template to kind of how to apply for a Google Ads account, loads of different things. So please do kind of explore that. Also, in terms of kind of other workshops and learning, I mentioned at the start that this program is part of, it's a series. So we've got other workshops, and the next one we've got, is all about crafting your message. So that's all about copywriting and kind of selling your message and trying how to get your key message across, and also importantly how to get an action from your message. So that would be a good one if you're kind of wanting to learn more about fundraising and call to actions. Then we've also got one on email marketing, so kind of using MailChimp, and that will kind of talk about the customer journey. So you would have seen the infographic a few slides earlier. So that's about how to build a relationship and build that journey with your audience via email. And then the last one we've got is about an introduction to Canva. So for those of you who don't know, Canva is like a free graphic design tool website, so you can create posters, flyers. It's really intuitive. Even if you don't have any experience with graphic design, it's so easy to use because there's templates and stuff, and you come out with really professional looking graphics for social media, newsletters, banners, anything. And you can get a free, if you're a not-for-profit, you can get a free professional account for that, where you get access to kind of all the facilities on it. So yeah, like if you're interested in Canva and getting an account, then that's a good one to attend. And in the follow-up email, I'll send links to all of those sessions. So that's me, enough of me waffling on. I'm going to go now to questions, and I know that there was a few in the chat, so I'm just going to scroll up, but feel free now to add any questions in the chat while I just find the questions that were asked. So Steve, I know you asked one. So our festival is over 2 weeks and 70 plus events. What approaches should we look at to extend the ticket selling period from a one payday to months of sales? I'm not sure quite sure what you mean by that, Steve. Would you be able to give some more info
Can
about
you hear
that?
me, Laura?
Yeah.
So our festival is every 4 years, and we have a set of we put a big tent up on the recreation ground.
Yeah.
We have a number of events in there, typically some tribute bands, but also local interests, like all the schools do a turn and things like that.
Yeah.
And what we found last time is that our marketing and advertising seemed to focus very much when the tent went up and people physically saw something and people started to buy tickets. But the problem with that is with 70 events, people were only able to afford one or two of the events. Okay. And what our issue is how do we get people to be buying tickets much earlier? So we're going across, if you like, we're going across 3, 4, maybe 5 months of people buying tickets, rather than in the last few weeks.
Okay. So do people buy tickets for each event rather than like the day itself? So like if whatever event is happening, they'll buy a ticket for that particular thing happening. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's, as I say, there's a number of genres that we deal with. So there are a number of tribute bands, which typically we would get 700-800 people to turn up. And we have all sorts of chats, things like mad professors doing things about why should you put sunscreen on your child type thing. So a real mix. And the brass band and anything else. So it is a mix. But what we found was that the people, particularly were going to the tribute bands, they were making a choice of whether we're going to go to the Screaming Beavers or Ashish or whatever else. And what we'd like to do is to get them to buy the tickets much earlier. So you know, if you like, they build up a packet of tickets and then they just go.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, part of that, for me, kind of looking at that, I would look at that and kind of in two different kind of elements or kind of ways to tackle that, because part of it you could say could be more about the ticketing strategy itself. And okay, well, if people are only choosing to go to one event, why is that? Is that because they can only afford one event, or because multiple things are happening at the same time and they've had to make a choice? So I don't know, maybe you consider kind of extending that out to kind of like a day ticket or a weekend ticket, or something that's longer than just the event itself. So I would kind of potentially look at that element as well. But in terms of marketing, anything, I always find that anything which requires an action, and particularly a financial action, most of the time it really requires someone to really make that leap to kind of financially commit to that thing. So kind of you want to be kind of almost kind of making sure that you're continuously hitting people with kind of your message, so that you're kind of encouraging them to make that leap. So I definitely would start your marketing. You say you want people to be buying tickets months beforehand. So whenever you want people to be buying tickets, you want to be starting your marketing at that point as well. So you want to think about kind of like a launch plan, really, and what activities can you be doing in the launch beforehand to kind of encourage people to start buying tickets earlier. So that might be, I don't know, you might get some of the tribute bands to do some promotions on their social media, and the acts that you're working with, you want to get local partners involved. You definitely maybe want to have kind of a creative campaign in terms of like a real visual campaign about the festival, so that people can kind of see that locally and kind of attach it with your festival. But yeah, kind of like I kind of bringing your comms kind of further in advance of the event itself will definitely help, because it's getting the word out there. But you want to make sure that those comms will last, and you're kind of you're doing a variety of things to people. So kind of getting staging it so that kind of various different partners are sharing the content at different times, so you're reaching different audiences all in the kind of lead up to the festival. That's personally kind of what my approach would be to that. Obviously I don't know as much in depth as you about your audience and your situation, but those two approaches together I would definitely tackle. I mean, maybe you want to go out to previous if you've got consent from them, and you've got a newsletter or whatever, maybe you want to go out to previous people and ask them, kind of what ticketing structure would you like to see, or kind of why have you only chosen to come to one event beforehand? What stopped you from going to multiple, or why have you why have you booked the time that you've booked? What would make you want to book earlier in advance? So a bit of kind of market research as well, just to find out directly what it is that you can do that people want. Hope that's helped.
Thanks very much, Laura. Thank you.
So could you please send links to the free tools? Yeah, Denise, yeah. I'll send out after this session an email. Karina, how often would you record analytics? Weekly, monthly? It completely depends, up to you, really. I tend to do, so for social media and website, I do a monthly one. And then at the end of the year, I'll do an overall yearly one, because it kind of allows you to kind of keep a track of, the monthly one allows you to keep a track of your kind of progression. And it's particularly if you've got KPIs and things that you're working to, okay, right, we need to do a bit more this month, this isn't working. It allows you to kind of evaluate things, but also it allows you to really pick, and hone in on trends. So you'll be able to see, kind of, when you look at monthly, it's much easier to look at the month instead of the year, and you'll be able to look at a date and think, okay, we had a spike of activity around that date. What was that? Okay, it was this particular post or this particular email. Okay, people seem to really resonate with that. So it's easier to kind of track your wins and your losses. But again, it's completely up to you. You know, if you've got a campaign that you're working on, which is only 2 weeks, or an event that you've, you know, launched 2 weeks beforehand, you want to be tracking analytics daily, really, to track the progress and make sure that you're hitting ticket sales or the awareness that you want to get. So yeah, that's what I would say. And how do you record it? On a spreadsheet? Yeah, so I tend to, so I've got a social media kind of data chart that on Excel. So I track kind of followers, post reach, impressions, engagement rate, and how many posts you've done as well. So I track that every month across Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Those are the channels that we've got. And then also I'll have a look at the Google Analytics. So as I mentioned before, kind of at Sector 3, we're more bothered about the engagement of our content rather than the reach and how many people are reaching it. You know, for us, it's more important that it's getting to the right people and that people are getting use out of it. So I'll kind of track dwell time. I'll track reach and visits as well, because it's useful to know, but it's not the most important thing to us. Also file downloads, and you know, various different conversions, and I'll do that monthly. And that's just because obviously there's so much stuff that I'm doing day to day that I don't have the ability to do it daily or weekly, so it's much easier for me to do it monthly. But again, you know, generally a spreadsheet is good because you're working with numbers and data, it allows you to kind of tally up financially. But in terms of qualitative data, you know, if you get you know, if someone shares your post on social media, or if someone gives you some feedback that is really good, you might just want to take a screenshot of that and save it in like a document of you know, that you accumulate over the month or whatever, or the year. So yeah, however kind of best suits you, really.
Thank you.
No worries. I'm just looking through. I don't think there was any questions in the chat. Yeah, I think that was all the questions from the chat. Does anyone else have any other questions? Again, I'll send everything out, the slides, any useful links, templates, etc., and also the details of the upcoming workshops in an email after this session. I'll also send out, if you wouldn't mind, I'll send out talking about evaluation and stuff, I'll send out an evaluation form, because it's really useful for us and for me to know if you found this content useful, if there's anything you would like to have particularly known about this topic, or anything that we can change to make it better. I do know that in the Eventbrite for this, I did mention that we would be talking about through case studies, but on compiling this presentation, I kind of realized quite quickly that it's quite difficult to talk about case studies in terms of a marketing strategy. So I've tried to put in examples and talk about examples where I can. So apologies for that if you were expecting full on kind of case studies, but I just found it difficult to marry the two. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions, then I will let you all go. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thank you. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.